In a previous episode of this series, I talked about how I found a binder in the wild that can be used to make primitive bread. And right now you're looking at it. It's cattail. And more specifically, we'll be using the cattail root. Now, cattail roots are jam-packed with starch. And although the best binder to use is something containing gluten, there's just so much starch in the root of a cattail that it can work just fine as a binder in making the bread that we need. So I'm just going to go ahead here and pull out a dozen or so cattail plants, and I'll throw them onto the shore here where I can wash the gunk out of them and extract the roots. And as you see, it's a very gunky job as you muck about in the mud here, and so you're definitely going to need some rubber boots to do this. And so here I'm just quickly cutting off the main portions of the roots. There will be a lot of little tiny hairs, hair type roots that grow out from the main root. You don't need to keep those hairs, you can rip them off just so long as you keep the main root with you. And I'm going to take these home where I can clean them up a little bit better and I'll peel them. And so as you see, these roots are definitely not attractive looking, but look here as I peel the outer layer away, and you can see it's a nice clean white fibrous core to the root on the inside. And also look how easily I can peel the root with my fingers. And there are some roots that I had a little more trouble doing that, so I used my knife here just to peel the outer layer away, which was just as easy to do. And so now that I've got my roots all nicely washed and peeled, now we have to go about the process where we just extract the starch from them. And to do that, first of all, just have to slightly mash the roots with something hard, so I'm just using the back of my axe there. And you see here how fibrous they are. They're just full of little strings. And so when you pound them with something hard, it loosens all the fibers and kind of loosens all the starch that they contain. And then you just throw it into a bowl of water. So now that I've got all of my roots nicely bruised and the fibers pulled apart, I've got them in my bowl here where I will wring them out in the water, and the starch will separate. And as you watch me squeeze the roots out, you can kind of see a creamy white slimy film come off into the water, and the water turns quite milky. So I found that this was the best method. I squeezed the roots out in one bowl, and where I felt that the water was became saturated enough, I moved on to the next bowl and continued to squeeze the same roots out into the second bowl. And by the time I reached the third bowl of water here, there was just a little bit of starch left that you see in the bottom, just resting there. And you just let the bowls of water sit for a while now, because the starch, since it's heavier than the water, it'll sink down into the bowl. And so just leave it for a while, and a nice layer of starch will form on the bottom. And you can see it starting to happen there. But anyways, after a couple hours, here's what it looks like. The starch has completely settled now onto the bottom, and you see most of it in the first bowl that I did there. And all you have to do to separate the water from the starch is just to pour the water off the top, and what's left is the starch, which is the binder that we need to make our primitive bread. So you see, it's a bit of work to do this, but it's definitely not hard or complicated. And here's a preview of the next episode, where I actually teach you how to make primitive bread. If you like today's episode, or anything that has to do with the outdoors or wild edibles, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching.